Okay, so welcome back, and in this video we're going to take a look at the next level up from the individual word. We're going to look at the sentence, which, as I'm sure you know, is a key building block in language and in communication. And first of all, I just want you to consider this question here. What is a sentence? So just pause the video. Just try and write down your own definition or a good definition for a sentence. Okay, so I always find this an interesting exercise to do with students. A lot of people find it quite difficult to actually describe what a sentence is, to define it. I get people say things like, it's an idea, it's a phrase, it starts with a capital letter and it ends in a full stop. And all of those things are fine. They all are involved in a sentence, but they don't really define a sentence. And so what I'm going to do in this next slide is give you a really nice working definition of a sentence. This will be something I think you'll find quite useful in your own written work going forward. Okay, so from a grammatical point of view, a sentence is a subject plus a verb. In 99.9% of cases, a sentence has to have a subject and a verb. And let me give you an example of this. I studied history at school. The verb would be to study, and the subject, in this case, the subject is I. That is the person doing the studying. So just to define what this term here is, the subject, this is usually a person, can sometimes be a thing, well, cannot quite often be a thing actually. Okay, so the subject is the person, object or thing that is linked to the verb. Okay, so for example, let me give you a few examples here. The car is fast. The verb is, and car is linked to the verb. It's the car that is fast, so the car is the subject there. She was hungry. Got the verb to be again here, this time in the past tense. Was as the verb, and here she is going to be the subject because she is attached directly to the verb. And this is a really good way of defining what is and what isn't a sentence. Okay, and so this is a really nice way of defining what is and what isn't a sentence. So let me give you some examples here, and hopefully this will clarify exactly what I mean. So for example, the dog angry. Okay, now is that a full sentence? The dog angry? No, it's not a full sentence. It's kind of caveman language. And what are we missing here? Well, we have a subject, the dog, but we don't have a verb. And the verb should be, in this case, it would be either is or maybe feels angry. The dog is angry or the dog feels angry. So we have to have both a subject and a verb in order for us to have a complete sentence. Let me give you another example. I'll do it just above here. Okay, is a very difficult task. Is this a full sentence? Is a very difficult task. Again, no, it's not a full sentence. This time it's not caveman language, but it's just you don't understand what the reference is to. So we're going to have something in at the beginning here. We're going to have some type of a subject here. So let's say the subject, I'll just move this around a little bit. Let's say that the subject here would be something like, winning the case is a very difficult task. So we have a subject here. The subject is winning the case. Okay, so we're going to go on to do an exercise now where I want you to identify the subject and the verb in each of these sentences. Hopefully it shouldn't be too difficult for you to do, because I think the examples I just gave you were slightly more challenging, to be honest with you. So let's have a look at this first one. Matteo played well today. So just pause the video and try and underline the verb and then the subject here. Okay, so hopefully you realize that the verb here would be the verb to play. And the subject, which is attached to the verb, subject and verb are always attached to each other, is Matteo. Okay, so it was Matteo who was doing the playing. Next up, the boys worked as a team. Okay, so just have a go at the same exercise here. Now again, hopefully you realize that the verb is the verb to work. Here we have it in the past tense. And who is it who's doing the working? Who is attached to the verb? It is the boys. So the boys are the subject. Okay, and then lastly, the film was incredibly exciting. So again, just underline the subject and verb in that sentence. Okay, so in this case, the film is the subject, and that is attached to the verb to be. The past tense of the verb to be. The film was incredibly exciting. Okay, so it's not too difficult to identify a subject and a verb in a sentence. And this will cover you for 99.9% of sentences. There are a few examples where you don't have a clear subject and verb. So for example, something like an exclamation like get out. You don't have a clear subject in that sentence or that exclamation. There is an implied subject, which would usually be you, get out, if you were addressing somebody, but there isn't a stated subject. So this is a really useful definition really for a sentence. A sentence is a minimum of a subject and a verb. Okay, so next up we're going to look at this topic of subject-verb agreement. This might be something you've looked at in a foreign language if you have studied a foreign language, but the basic idea is we have to make sure that our subject, the person, object or thing, match up with the verb form. So we're going to have a look at this now. So this first sentence here, we was on our way to the match. Now hopefully you could identify straight away, there is quite a serious mistake in this. We've got the subject we, but we've got the verb form was, and obviously the verb form should be were. We were on our way to the match. Okay, and this is the type of error that can creep in speech, in day-to-day speech, particularly in regional speech. So this one here, we was on our way to the match. This is one you hear more, to be honest, in the south, places like London, Brighton, Essex, these kind of areas. So it's a mistake that tends to creep in that kind of area. They do kind of tend to match up a little bit with geography. It's quite interesting when you look at it in a bit more detail. So what I want you to do now is just to read through the next 4 sentences, and I want you just to check the subject-verb agreement. Is it correct or incorrect? And if not, I want you to correct it. So just pause the video and take a second to do that. Okay, so next up we have the sentence, these are the best flowers I've seen. And these is plural and are is also plural, so they match up together. Okay, so the subject is these flowers, That's obviously plural, and that does match up with are. So that matches up perfectly. That sentence is correct. Next up, I was on my way to the cinema when I saw John. Okay, so hopefully you identified that we do have a problem here with the subject and verb. The subject is I, and the verb there is in the plural, it's were. So subject is singular, the verb is plural. That shouldn't be the case. We need to match the verb up. So it's going to be I was on my way to the cinema when I saw John. And actually this particular error is one that you see more in the north, this format. So something you see in my region, Yorkshire, also Lancashire as well. You can get away with it in very casual speech, although I personally wouldn't advocate it. But if you're actually writing in that way, you're going to really run into problems, because this is the verb to be. It's the most common verb in the English language. And if you can't conjugate that verb properly, you can't use that verb properly, you can't use the language properly, never mind gain a pass grade. Okay, so next up, you is the first person I've met with those ideas. That's almost kind of comically offbeat. Obviously it should be you are the first person I've met with those ideas. Next up, there are no other routes for us to explore. There are. Okay, so we have plural here. There are no other routes for us to explore. Plural routes. So that all matches up just fine. So this is one just to bear in mind. Do make sure, if you do have this kind of speech habit, make sure that it doesn't creep in to your writing. Probably wouldn't apply to most students who are going to be watching this, but just in case, do take care of this one. This is one that would really, really drag you down. So make sure you're not making simple subject-verb agreement mistakes. Okay, so those are some of the basics of grammar. Hopefully this was useful to you, and perhaps gave you the opportunity just to go over a few things again that you haven't been through for a few years. We're going to move on from here now, so I will see you in the next video.